I'm going to talk mostly about our appeal of um, the SFPUC's, the Environmental Review Office at Planning, and their preliminary mitigated negative declaration relative to the West Side Potable Emergency Firefighting Water System. I'm going to talk about that primarily. I mean, obviously, I'll mention some things about AWSS and why this is a project that we do not think fulfills the obligation to the community of that. But Lisa's going to talk about that more than I am, so I'm going to just try to stick to the appeal, and I'll be quick. I don't have a tremendous amount because I'm focusing on that subject. So the appeal. We received notification at the end of October that the Planning Commission was issuing a preliminary mitigated negative declaration for the West Side Potable Emergency Firefighting Water System, which is a potable, dual-purpose, co-benefit pipeline system for portions of the Sunset D4 and extending into the Richmond. That's on the planning board right now, and would have been continuing if we had not appealed. So we've held up that process a little bit. By the way, that appeal will be heard at the Planning Commission on March 26th. I believe I remember that date correctly, March 26th. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're appealing that. So at the conclusion of their preliminary environmental review, the Planning Department's Environmental Review Office made the decision to issue this preliminary mitigated negative deck. The deck states that any and all environmental impacts for this project, the West Side Potable EFWS, will be mitigated to become less than significant impact. So we're appealing that finding because we believe, number one, there are environmental impacts that will be beyond less than significant. In particular, CEQA review requires that a project be considered for the environmental impacts it will have during operation as well as during construction. And this is a fundamental flaw in the planning, in the Environmental Review Office's PMN deck. They don't give adequate consideration to impacts that would be had during operation of the project because they fail to recognize that a dual purpose system has more than one operational phase. There's an operational phase when it's providing potable water, but there's also an operational phase when it's providing high pressure emergency firefighting water post-earthquake, which is, of course, the other half of the co-benefit design. Because the West Side Potable EFWS co-benefit, or as some of us like to call it, a no-benefit system, will fail in its most important operational phase. That's post-earthquake firefighting. And that failure will result in conflagration and firestorm consuming the Sunset, the Richmond, and frankly, more than a dozen other neighborhoods citywide that are still unprotected by an expanded AWSS. Because that's the environmental impact of failure of the system in its operational phase, its co-operational phase, the emergency firefighting or post-earthquake emergency firefighting. It's simply impossible to find that those environmental impacts, those potential environmental impacts, are of less than significant impact. Therefore, the Planning Commission needs to find that this project needs a full environmental impact review, and the agencies, PUC, SFPUC, the Board of Supervisors, Planning, need to be considering whether this is a project that has within its capacity the ability to achieve this dual purpose, right? That's not a consideration that an environmental review office can undertake during a preliminary environmental review. They don't make a lot of judgment calls about whether projects are worthy, meritorious, whether they achieve a specific goal. When you get into a full environmental impact review, and if they consider all of these matters and all these potential environmental impacts downstream in the operational phase, then you have to ask the question, is this the right project? So like in summation of that, the failure of this project in its operational phase, its post-earthquake, emergency firefighting, water supply, operational phase, that failure and the unimaginable environmental impact that it would have is not simply the result of bad engineering or bad environmental review or anything like that. It's a design or a policy. It's a problem with the policy of the project and the design of the project being in conflict with the purported purpose. And what I mean by that is, if the purpose that was promised in multiple ESSER bonds over the last 15 years, that we would expand AWSS protection to the unprotected parts of the city using that ESSER bond money, if this project can't be judged to achieve that, then you have to ask yourself if it's the right project. And there's one absolutely fundamental reason why this will fail. It's because it's a potable system that depends on potable water from reservoirs filled from Hetch Hetchy. It is a demand to use potable water and not use ocean water or salt water. The city of San Francisco is bounded on three sides, and out here in the Sunset, our house is less than a mile from Ocean Beach, and we stare out every night at the sunset over the largest body of water on the planet. And yet we're talking about creating a co-benefits, dual purpose, emergency firefighting water system that's complex in nature, that has multiple points of failure, but that one point of failure that simply can't be designed away or can't be engineered away is that if you rely on potable water instead of that largest body of water on the planet, you're going to run out of water. And that's where the system fails. And that's where the most significant environmental impacts, again, conflagration, firestorm, and destruction of most of the neighborhood out here. And that's what's really in play. And that's the purpose of our appeal, is that you simply cannot build a system that depends primarily or singularly on potable water and be successful in this regard. That's the challenge that PUC picked when they decided to try to do this as a co-benefit system instead of a standalone AWSS. That wasn't a decision that the people made or the voters made or the voters for the ESSER bonds made. That was a decision that came at PUC. And they faced that fundamental challenge of creating a system that depends upon potable water as its singular primary source of emergency firefighting water instead of depending on an unlimited volume of water from the Pacific Ocean. That's the heart of our appeal. Again, we'll be heard in the Planning Commission March 26th, so just a couple months, and we'll do the best we can to make this very argument that these issues were not considered in this design or in the environmental review, and that they need to be, and that there should be a call for a robust environmental impact review to that consider and perhaps reconsider the planning of this project.
Good evening, everybody. Deborah, thank you. Hi, Eileen. Thank you for setting up this meeting. It's very important to us as a department to be available and responsive to the community. I grew up out in the Sunset District, so I have a very strong affection for the area. I would like to say just what I'm going to speak to more of is our relationship with PUC and what we've created as our stopgap measures while this co-benefit system is being installed. We have a strong team at the fire department led by Mike Mullen, who is our Assistant Deputy Chief of Support Services. We have Assistant Deputy Chief Gareth Miller, who is on this call now, who is our ESER bond project manager, who can speak to some of the specifics that you mentioned earlier in your appeal, John, as well as Josh Andresen from PUC. And we also have a water supply captain named Jim McGuigan. So we have a strong team. I just want to make everybody comfortable that we are prepared in the meantime for post-earthquake conflagration. So as many of you are aware, we've purchased 3 new hose tenders. 2 of them, I believe, are in service now out in the Sunset. And we've also installed 30 new cisterns. So in working with PUC, we've also identified and mapped out our water supply from our existing static sources out in the Sunset District. So we have Sunset Wells, 45th and Santiago. We have Sunset Reservoir, which we are considering installing piping so that we can actually access all of the water from Sunset Reservoir should we have a conflagration out there. We've identified an aquifer out at Old Flyshacker swimming pool, which I think holds nearly 1 million gallons of water, which we could potentially access for firefighting purposes. We've also identified some static sources in the Richmond, and we have our static sources, the lakes, Golden Gate Park, Spreckles Lake, and currently named Crane Lake, which used to be Stowe Lake. We've been working really well with PUC. We have a new manager of the AWSS system. His name is John Mercurio. He's been with the water department, comes from a water department family, and has been very responsive to our needs. In fact, our first initial meeting with him was when we discussed installing that piping to access water from Sunset Reservoir. We conducted a drill over the summer where we demonstrated that we can move water from a high pressure hydrant that's located from the Ashbury tank right near the De Young Museum. We can move water from there in high pressures nearly a mile going west towards the beach. So that was a great dual operation between ourselves and PUC. What we've been doing internally from the fire department perspective is we have an application that we have on our tablets that allow our battalion chiefs. Sunset District is Battalion 8 and the Richmond is Battalion 7. And it allows our battalion chiefs to train. So what we do in case of an earthquake or a large scale disaster is we break up into what we call battalion operations. So battalion control would mean that one battalion chief is actually in charge of their whole battalion when it comes to any emergency that would occur, and they would dispatch units as necessary. So using that tablet, we have a program that allows us to map out where we can pull water from, where the available static sources are, where the hydrants are. So our plan is currently with the new utilization of the drone system that the police have, we can use some of the drone technology to identify main breaks and
Mm.
and stop those breaks more quickly than we would have been able to in the past, especially if roads are impassable, and use some of our low pressure, water for firefighting more effectively than we would have been before. So currently, the furthest hydrants west on our AWSS are 12th Avenue in the Richmond and 19th Avenue in the Sunset. And again, we can use that program and our host tenders, in addition to relay pumping, to get water going west all the way out, we believe, to Ocean Beach. So I feel like we're well positioned to fight fires out there. We conduct training on a weekly basis every Saturday morning. We test our high pressure hydrants, and we actually have 5-inch hose drill, which is a 5-inch hose drill, which demonstrates our ability to install and utilize an above ground water supply system, which can be very, located in different areas of the city based on need. So I don't want to steal too much from Chief Miller because I know he's prepared a presentation for you, but I really appreciate all of your time and your interest in keeping our city safe, and we're glad to cooperate and work with you in doing so.
And if it's all right, I'll share screen, and I have about 10 slides I would love to go through.
Okay.
Let's get this one up here.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to echo the chief's sentiment. Thank you for the interest and the attention. And just want to say that as a firefighter in San Francisco, I am grateful to our communities for all the support that has been provided, supporting ESER bonds, supporting the fire department, giving us the resources to be able to do our job. So thank you for that. And again, thank you for your attention, and John, for your thoughtful and heartfelt comments and interest in the program. So we'd love to share some more information and echo some of the things that Chief was talking about, because we were advised the topic was about turning the AWSS back to the PUC. So again, mentioning some of the things that Chief already did about what we in the fire department and the SFPUC are doing every day to cooperate and make sure that the system is operating well, that it's functioning to its greatest capacity. And we'll talk a lot about pipes and infrastructure, but a big part of that is the people. And the chief mentioned some of the folks involved, Captain McGuigan, our water supply officer. My position is the PUC liaison. We work with the PUC on a daily basis. The PUC responds to our greater alarm fires. They send their gatemen out to assist ensuring that we have adequate water supply, and sometimes opening or closing gates to ensure that we can augment the water supply, which is present in the system. We conduct quarterly training with the PUC and an annual large-scale exercise. And right now we're getting extensive assistance from the PUC machine shop to service our portable water supply equipment, our Gleason valves, and other hardware. And of course, the whole SF Water Department EFWS team, their supervisors, you mentioned John Mercurio, Dan Varney, who really are the nuts and bolts of making sure the system is working every day. And then in addition to that, we spent a great deal of time cooperating with the PUC and coordinating on these capital improvement projects and planning them out. We'll get into the infrastructure. So just a little review. You may be very familiar with this, but for those who aren't, San Francisco has an extensive system for fighting fires, and it's well-founded. There's a big reason for it, and we all know it's 1906. So like every city, we have a standard pressure firefighting system. It's based on the domestic water supply system. That's that small white hydrant you see on the screen. And San Francisco, though, after that '06 earthquake, did decide to develop a high pressure water system, formerly known as the AWSS. That's the larger barreled hydrant you see in the bottom right. Like it says, it's an extensive pipeline system, 1,500 hydrants. In addition to that, the 2 saltwater pump stations, the 5 fireboat manifolds. In addition, what we consider part of this system are saltwater suction hydrants that are along the waterfront of the city, and then more than 180 cisterns around the city, averaging about 75,000 gallons of water, some greater. And then we'll talk some more about the planned potable emergency firefighting water system and what it could bring to the system, and especially to the west side of the city. Just a diagram view of the existing system. It was built after the '06 earthquake. It is a gravity-fed system, the main source being that over 10 million gallons at Twin Peaks Reservoir, and then the additional tanks that are shown in there, Ashby and Jones, and they feed the different zones. If you're in the lowest zone and pressure needs to be augmented, valves can be opened to achieve greater pressure so it can be fed all the way from the top of the city. Like we said, the primary source here is drink. It is not salt water, it is fresh water, but it is non-drinking water because it is stored in this open reservoir and in these non-potable drinking water tanks. And then we do have the backup source of either pumped salt water from the pump stations or pumped in by the fire boat into the manifold. As we mentioned before, this ownership of the system was transferred to the PUC in 2010. And they are responsible for the ownership and the maintenance of the system for the benefit of the fire department. There's a map of that existing system, and as John identified, the problem with that system is that it's very focused on that eastern side of the city in the northeast, the high value district that existed after the 2006 earthquake, and it doesn't focus on the west side of town at all. So to talk about the potable emergency firefighting water system, what is the idea behind this? So the concept is it's an earthquake resistant, high pressure water transmission system. So on a day-to-day basis, it's delivering drinking water to the Sunset and the Richmond. It's a transmission line. But then in time of need, valves can be closed, pumps turn on so that then it functions as a high pressure firefighting water system. It's based on utilizing multiple potential sources of water, including the backup source of water of Lake Merced, over 1 billion gallons of water available in that source. And we're working closely with the PUC to help develop this design. If you saw the CEQA notice, you should be familiar with this diagram. It shows the basic plan outline of the pipe alignment of the system. And as it notes, the green sections are funded by the current ESER and Water Capital Improvement Plan bonds. And the blue sections are in planning and are be underway at future dates. It also details some possible variations in the alignments. And the fire department's advocating for aligning the pipe along Sunset Boulevard, one side or the other. We feel that there's a real strategic value in aligning the pipe with that significant fire break. To talk about some of the reasons why this ended up being the preferred alternative as opposed to just extending the existing AWSS system or building an additional AWSS. The existing AWSS system doesn't contain enough water to service the entire city. And so in order to do it, in order to utilize it, you would have to add additional reservoir capacity, and that's difficult and expensive. And so we see this as a way to utilize resources that San Francisco has that we think are adequate in the most cost-effective fashion. So utilizing the existing reservoirs that are in the city, keeping Lake Merced as an emergency backup, using this earthquake-resistant ductile iron pipe, in some places welded steel pipe, so that it's a seismically resilient system that not only provides firefighting water, but can also provide drinking water once the fires are out. And we feel it's a reliable system based on the modern engineering and materials. And because of the variety of water sources available and all the recent improvements that have been made to the PUC pipeline system that ensures that water will travel from Hetch Hetchy to San Francisco within 24 hours after an extreme seismic event. And so to address the saltwater question, the big reason to not utilize saltwater is the existence of a pump station, which is already there at Lake Merced. Here is an existing body of water, over 1 billion gallons of water, probably weeks of firefighting capacity in that one system with a pump station that is already present there. If we chose instead to use saltwater, it would entail building somewhere between 5 and 10 saltwater pump stations along Ocean Beach, which we're pretty sure would be challenging just from a construction standpoint, but also permitting standpoint. And then it would be expensive and difficult to maintain them. And you look at all the requirements that would have to go with those, the power, diesel backup power. It's a significant amount of infrastructure, which we feel can be provided by the pump station at Lake Merced. In addition, because they'd be firefighting only, we would not be able to access the water improvement, the capital improvement bonds that are available through the PUC. And so, yeah, to speak to that funding, because this is a co-benefit system, there is funding from ESSER bonds and then also from the capital improvement plan bonds. And that allows us to expand the system more quickly than we would just through the ESSER bond funding alone. And here's a schedule for the project. You can see contract A, the section from Lake Merced to almost Stern Grove, is close to going out to bid and award. Because of the CEQA appeal, that will likely be delayed anywhere from 6 months to a year, but very close to, starting construction on the first section of this system. And contract B, that section proposed to be down slope in the Sunset Avenue corridor to follow shortly thereafter. That is the end of my component. I will stop sharing. And yeah.
And Jean Barish, you have the first question.
Thank you. Actually, I have a bunch of questions, but I'll just do one at a
Sure.
time. I don't want to monopolize the conversation. If I get a chance for more, I'd appreciate it. I don't claim to be an expert on this. I've heard both sides of the discussions, but I'm still trying to get up to speed. But I understand that there were two grand jury investigations into the switch from the AWSS to the ESER somewhere in the last 5 or 6 years, which both recommended using the AWSS system instead of the proposed one that you're talking about. How do you respond to those two grand jury hearings, those two grand jury opinions that were rendered, and how do you reconcile what they say with what your plans are?
I'd have to see, I'm not as familiar. I'm familiar with the grand jury, which called for the expansion of the system. I'm not aware of the grand jury specifying exactly how it was to take place. This design is based on a great deal of study. Back in 2018, the fire department and the PUC, worked collaboratively to assess 11 or 12 different options, including the saltwater pump supply option and this co-benefit system. And at that time decided to, embark down this path of delivering the co-benefit system. I've been involved in this project for about 2.5 years now. And as a firefighter, I'm very familiar with what was the AWSS, the EFWS system, and was very comfortable with the way that works. But in my time spent here in learning about the system, learning from the engineers at the SFPUC, I've come to appreciate this system, and I do believe that it provides the value and the operational needs that are required at the best cost. I think if you were to try to build a completely standalone AWS system, the costs would be much, much higher, and it would create a great deal of redundancy. I feel like the city and the residents are getting the benefit of this earthquake resilient drinking water system, which is available most of the time, and the benefit of the high pressure firefighting water system. And that's kind of what won me over, is that, we do utilize the high pressure firefighting water system from time to time, especially at greater alarm fires. But in trying to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollars and deliver the most value, I think this is the best option with my knowledge and understanding of the system.
Okay, Heather, you're next. Unmute.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Miller. I was wondering a couple things. What is the timeline under which the actual firefighting capacity would come online? Because from my review of the preliminary neg deck is that the water line, the work that's going to be done in the first 2 phases is primarily an only waterline replacement in a Sunset Reservoir to actually enable enhanced firefighting systems capacity with the system, and that those future phases are not yet funded. Can you identify if that's a correct summary or correct it as needed?
I had some trouble hearing you. I don't know if anybody else did. I felt like the
Oh,
connection was
okay.
breaking up.
I'll
So
repeat it
can
again.
I answer? I think I got it. So if I miss, I'll respond. And
Okay.
if I miss it, just, correct me. But what I heard is you're asking about when is, the system going to start providing benefit? Because it sounds like we're just replacing water lines and we're not adding firefighting capacity. And the way this system is designed is that as each component is completed, it's adding firefighting capacity. And that's why it's being built the direction it is from Lake Merced northward, is because it's connected to the Lake Merced pump station. And so as pipe is added, there will be hydrants on that system and they will be able to produce water for firefighting. It won't be the complete system. When the complete system is built out and looped and all the pump stations are complete, it will provide the full operational benefit, but we will get added firefighting capacity based on the system, even in the interim when it is being built out and, in the process of getting to the end. So every, section that we add will increase the capabilities of the fire department.
Can you explain how you're going to enable the pressure that you need with the larger pipes and how that system is resilient to potential hacking or failure during an emergency?
I don't think I can address the hacking part. And this may be something where Josh can jump in and speak to some of the technical components, but the way the system is designed now, in the interim, before the system is entirely built and the pump stations are completed, it will depend on either gravity from one of the reservoirs in the city to provide water flowing through the system, or the pumps at Lake Merced. And so both of those will be available to provide firefighting water, not at the full capacity that's, will be available at the endpoint of the system, but it will be in seismically resilient pipe. And, should an earthquake occur before the entire system is built out, we will have an enhanced firefighting capability because of that.
George, you have the next question?
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Hi, Gareth. This is George Wooding. We talked at the Capital Planning Committee meeting, and then we followed it up later with a verbal conversation. And my question was about PSI, pounds per square inch, because what studies I had read showed that what happens when you use Kubota piping, the underground piping, you keep a steady 300 PSI when you're fighting a fire. But when you use tender systems, you have to hook them up, and then you have to hook that one up to another pipe. You also have to hook it up to a cistern, and then you hook it up to a fire truck, and the fire truck then has a certain amount of PSI, and it can be as low as 150 PSI to as high as 400. And what we were talking about is the consistency of the PSI. Because my problem with the system, I think the cisterns are fine to a certain extent. I don't know how long it takes to set up all this. But I feel like it could be problematic in that you may not have enough water power. If you use the existing gravity-fed piping that the city was going to use, which the PUC changed, and I talked to the PUC, I understand you have a very good relationship with them. So, but if you had used the underground piping, you would have had 300 PSI would have been your steady rate. But right now you have a fluctuation from 150 to 400, depending on what truck is being attached to and what water cannon is firing out water. So I wanted to bring that up to give you the chance to explain to the group why this system is better.
There's a lot to that answer. The existing system is a great design. And after the '06 earthquake, it was really tremendous because when you think about the technology at the time of using steam-powered pumps to move water for fighting fire, the idea that now you could have a system where you could put a pressure-reducing valve on a hydrant and just be able to use that directly was a tremendous innovation. Of course, we're a little different now because we have diesel fire engines, which are much more user-friendly, easier to employ. But the value of that high-pressure water system, of being able to just put a pressure-reducing valve on the hydrant and deploy hose lines straight off of it, is very valuable. And that's why the fire department is insisting on this high-pressure functionality of the system. The existing system, the pressures that are available do depend on, because it's a gravity-fed system, depending on what elevation the operation is taking place at, will affect the pressure that's available. So if someone is all the way down at sea level and the different valves are opened up, the high pressure, the existing system can deliver that 300 psi. That's the static pressure. Of course, it'll start going down once water is flowing. But if you're up at a higher elevation, there won't be as much pressure available. In general, in the fire department, we're looking for between 120 to 160 psi, and that's generally adequate for our operational needs. We also need to make sure that enough GPM, enough gallons per minute, are flowing through the system. And I do believe that the design, which is planned at this point, allows for adequate GPM for firefighting in the Sunset and the Richmond district, and at appropriate pressures for our firefighting systems. And it can be employed in many different ways. Like you said, we can put a Gleason valve on the hydrant, run hose lines straight off of it. We can use the hose tender connected to it to lay out a mile of hose and distribute that water into a geographically distant area because it's not a tightly gridded system. So having looked at the operational uses, I do think that this system will meet the needs of the fire departments in a post-earthquake environment.
Would
Chief
you
Miller,
be
can I add to that one too on the pressure?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Hi all, Josh Andresen. I'm a project manager with PUC. I've been with PUC for about 2 years. And like Chief Crispin and Chief Miller said, thank you so much for your concerns and questions tonight. And I just wanted to elaborate on the pressure. So Sutro Reservoir is near the top of Twin Peaks, and the first pipeline will tie into Sutro Reservoir. It's at a similar elevation as the current AWSS system reservoirs. So it will provide a similar pressure to the Western neighborhoods. Not only will it provide a similar pressure just by gravity, no pumps, it will also, it has 31 million gallons, which is 3 times the capacity of the Twin Peaks reservoir on the AWSS system. And that's Sutro tank alone. It's also, we're all about flexibility in this system. So Sutro is the highest tank. It's got 3 times the storage volume of AWSS. Sunset Reservoir, I think you've all seen, is massive. It's 177 million gallons. Chief Crispin talked about tying to it directly, but it will also be tied in to these Western pipes. It won't provide as much pressure, but as we get funding, we'll provide a pump station to boost that pressure even higher. And it does provide enough pressure even by itself. As you know, it's up pretty high in the Sunset. It does provide enough pressure to get good, reliable flow. So we have many different sources and pressures and flexibility. The fire department likes flexibility. So we have a lot of flexibility to use different sources, different pressures. So hopefully that helps answer your pressure question.
That's very helpful, Josh. I just wanted to state, I guess it's obvious, that you have half of the city with a much higher water pressure, District 3 to um, than the other half. And as high a water pressure as you are talking about from the PUC, you're still limited when you're using these cisterns to the truck that is spraying the water, regardless of the water pressure. And sometimes you have a hose a mile long, which is going to maybe take an edge off the water pressure. So, first off, the cisterns carry 75,000 gallons and they're limited. They may run out, they may not. Um, you know more about it than me. But my biggest point here is that you're lit with the gravity fed, you have a constant pressure with the cisterns and the different trucks you're setting up. You have a range of water pressure because it depends not on the water pressure, but on the truck itself and the capability of the truck to use its water. And that's my point. So, but Gareth answered that very well to me. But I did want the group to know about this kind of stuff. So thank you very much, Josh.
And Glenn, you're next.
Thank you very much. You know, so I have heard a number of people state that Lake Merced has a, billion gallons of water, and that is supposed to be very reassuring. But I also just recently heard from Lisa that we have to share Lake Merced with the city of San Mateo and the city of Daly City. This water is not all ours. And I was wondering if you had any understanding of the that legal challenge. And then I had one other question, a really quick one. Is it true that Muni is going to be taking some of the money from the AWSS to be able to support their operation? Two questions. Thank you.
Sure. I think I will let the PUC address the legal requirements for providing water for throughout their customers. That has to do with water in the system. I think what's important is thinking about, is there adequate water in San Francisco for San Francisco's uses, both for firefighting and for drinking water? And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the numbers I've heard is that San Francisco stores enough water in the city and county to last for somewhere between 3 and 5 days of the entire city's needs. And so that's just our potable drinking water, which is right here, right now, not counting water in Lake Merced. And so if we were in a situation where there was a significant earthquake and we needed to fight fire for 24, 36 hours, no one, of course, knows what the extent of the fire will be, where it'll take place, but there's been significant statistical modeling to try to assess the extent of the fires and how much water would be necessary to fight them. And we believe that there is more than adequate water to not only extinguish the fires in San Francisco, but to still supply drinking water, at least for a few days. And then because the PUC has, upgraded the systems and are confident that they can restore service after a major earthquake within 24 hours, that we believe there is definitely adequate water to provide for drinking water in the city and for the necessary firefighting, even before we start using the Lake Merced source.
That's right. And you got the storage days correct. Lake Merced is a last resort. That's our Hail Mary. It's the potable system should have plenty of supply on its own. And really, we just plan the backup to the emergency plan. And, if it comes to that, then Lake Merced is that large body of water that we can fall back to that we see as equivalent to the ocean because it provides several weeks of supply, and we don't see a scenario of the fire lasting more than several weeks. I don't know the answer to the legal question about Daly City and San Mateo, but I'm not aware of them having an ability to draw water out of Lake Merced, or any agreement that we would provide them Lake Merced water. That I don't think that's true. I've never heard of it, but I can look into it, get back to you. It hasn't come up in our conversations to date. And I'm not sure how we would get them water from Lake Merced.
Good point. How about the question about Muni taking the water from the the money from the AWSS?
No, that's a different agenda item. I mean, the Easter bond has an entire list. This is Eileen, of projects. One of the projects is this project here, the potable water supply system. The other one, and that's for $130 million. The SFMTA and this particular one, which is very questionable since they're not a public safety department, would get $200 million for the patrol yard upgrade, and the entire bond being $535 million. So there's an entire list of projects, but they are separate. The two are not the same.
And Fred Sanchez, you have the next question.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to say anything on this, but I was asked to come here by a few people. My name is Fred Sanchez. I'm the former deputy chief of the San Francisco Fire Department. And you have the best fire department in the world. Rely on their expertise. If they say this is the way to go, I'll tell you what. We talk about, for one, terminology, trucks and fire engines. Trucks carry ladders. Fire engines are the water. They have pumps on them. When the high pressure system is used, they have a valve. It's called a Gleason valve. They put that on the high pressure system. That reduces the 300 pounds of PSI down to workable pressures that pump into the fire engines. The fire engines then have pumps on there that regulate it, consistent pressure that can be used in any manner they want. The hose tenders that Chief Crispin talked about, they have pumps on it. They can regulate pressure. Trust me, this fire department is the best there is. 90% of all fires are put out by the fire engines that carry 500 gallons of water. Trust me, I was there in the 89 earthquake. I was in the marina, and post-earthquake, we lost maybe 3 or 4 blocks. We know what we're doing. I personally came up with the strategy on how to put out that fire. I was on Rescue 1. There was a 4-story building, and they were burning all down the street, the 3-story building. I said, hey, let's get up to the 4-story buildings. We'll put hoses on the top. Will be like a battleship. We'll cut holes on the 4th story and we'll shoot water from the A. It worked. You have the best fire department. Have confidence in them. Trust them. I'm in so much support of whatever strategy they will come up with. You have the best. There's not going to be any post fire that's going to ravage districts. It's just not going to happen. They're that good.
Real quickly, I don't like talking about non-subjects, but since the Easter bond came up, and Eileen was talking about the $200 million going to the SFMTA, they're going to add 465 units on that building. And what that really is becoming is a housing project. So with a up-to-date bus hub facility. So what you're really talking about is a hidden agenda item that nobody seems to know about yet. It may come out, but it probably will never, because when they go to pass this bond, all we're going to see is the smiling faces of the firemen who everybody loved, policemen, who everybody loved. And I have not yet read anything anywhere about the SFMTA car barn, let alone the 465 units that are going to be built there. So I just wanted everyone to know that so they would have that knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, and Jean, you're next.
Thank you. This is sort of more leaning toward a policy question than a technical question. What you said in your presentation several times was this new system is comparable in terms of effectiveness or close enough in terms of effectiveness, but much less expensive. So it sounds like a cost-effective way to deal with the risk. I guess my question is, how much money will be saved if you do this ESER program rather than the AWSS? And is there any qualitative difference between the outcome using the AWSS and the ESER? Because in my opinion, you want the best possible system, even if it's going to cost a little more money. So I'd kind of like to get an understanding of this economic analysis that you've done, as a result of which is that you concluded that the ESER was the best system to use.
Just to make sure, I know there's a lot of acronyms. What we're endorsing is the potable emergency firefighting water
That's the
system.
system I'm talking about. Maybe I mislabeled it, but I'm talking about the potable system versus the AWSS. And you made a comparison about the cost, but I'm wondering what the difference in cost is, number one, and what is the difference if you've been able to do an analysis of the pros and cons of those two systems.
So,
especially in terms of safety and the ability to put out fires.
Yes. What I can answer directly is the design of the current system, I think, meets the operational needs of the fire department. I think that from my understanding, and this predates my participation on the project because this decision to go with the co-benefit system took place back in 2018, that the analysis was completed then, the comparison, and the feasibility and the cost effectiveness of this program was decided at that point. So off the top of my head, I can't give you those numbers. I'd be willing to go back and research and follow up with you on that. But I do believe that the current design meets the operational needs, and I definitely would not be endorsing it or supporting it if I didn't think that was the case.
And what about the relative costs?
That's what I'm discussing about. I believe that analysis was done back, prior to the 2018 decision being made. Since that decision has been made, we've been pursuing this co-benefit system, and I don't think we've done, maybe Josh can speak to additional analysis to compare them was done. There are feasibility difficulties with just building out an AWSS system, like I described, because you'd have to add additional reservoir space. The existing pipe of the system that's in the ground now in some places would need to be upsized, and so you'd be tearing out existing pipe, replacing it with larger sizes. So it's a challenging prospect to just expand the existing system.
I understand that. I'm just trying to get to what's the bottom line for both of these systems.
Yeah, there was a study done that had cost numbers published. I don't have those top of my mind. I remember when I came on board the PUC, I reviewed those, and they were significantly more expensive for the saltwater. And frankly, I think that they missed a lot of costs because they didn't put the reservoirs in there. It's very challenging to just put pumps straight into the system without reservoirs.
Is there a way of getting that information?
Yeah, we could share the report, but I would caution that even though it shows the saltwater pump station being more expensive, I think that it's missing the full picture on all the costs. And the costs are also...
This is dismaying. I mean, in other words, if you're stating that this is a cost-effective system, I think it would really be nice to know what the two different costs are.
Sure.
And I think if you don't have that information, I don't know how you could conclude that this is comparable. It's a comparable system for less money. So I'd like to see those numbers.
Yeah, we can get those numbers for you. The other thing that's really important, Chief Miller mentioned, was that the PUC is paying half the funding for the co-benefit. And if we go back to saltwater pump station, you basically have half the budget to work with.
Well, that's a policy issue, but I'd really like to see the data.
Yes, if you could get that to me, I will distribute to everyone who attended this meeting. And we'll have one more question, and then I want to give Lisa a chance to speak. Heather?
Sure. Just from what, Jean, to your point, I had seen associated with one of the earlier bond measures that the AWS build out was going to be like 300 million in 5 years, if I remember. So that's why I'm kind of interested how this is cheaper, but so I'll look forward to seeing that. I have as some of you probably know, I filed an appeal as well based on the CEQA determinations that were made. And a couple of them not discussed here are, one is the Sunset Reservoir Pump Station. You have and I have two quick follow-ups after that. But the Sunset Pump Station, there's two alternative positions or sightings for that. One on the east side in the middle of the reservoir, one on the west side on the northwest corner. What are the determinants for which site you would build it out at and why?
I did not have that information. Do we have clear information of that to give out on that, Josh?
Well, that's the last leg of the system that would be built. We've studied it some, and it would come down to which is cost effective and constructible, and aesthetics is another issue as well. So we like the location in the back because it's furthest tucked away aesthetically and has the least impact. And so if we can construct that, we would do that. We're also currently studying if we, that pump station would essentially be redundant. And so it's really belt and suspenders at that point to have it. So there's potential
sorry, go ahead.
There's a potential that that we only need one pump station really for the system to be operable.
You mean one at the Lake Merced Reservoir or one at Sunset of the two?
There's another one near Sloped and
yeah.
Merced Manor. Mm-hmm.
Merced Manor, that's right. Sorry. So hopefully you'll be able to dial that in a little bit more because it was really hard to review what was driving having two alternatives. The other thing is that with regards to the execution of this, I felt like the CEQA mitigations, preliminary mitigations document, determinations that there would be no traffic impacts that are significant was poorly supported and overlooked the combined impact of having construction on Lake Merced from Brotherhood Way to Sunset and Sloat from 19th to Sunset. At the same time, we've got, and also starting down Sunset Boulevard. At the same time, we've got likely to be a longer 19th Avenue repaving project than anticipated. And in conjunction also with Park Merced and Stonetown constructions, and then just the traffic generated from this project, we're seeing traffic getting tied up very easily by a small accident or right now. And I think that if this project goes forward, or if and when, we really need to have and ask for a mitigation that includes opening up the Great Highway so that we can have some relief from what could be disastrous traffic. It's going to really separate San Franciscans from the north to the south. They just will not be able to get north-south on this side of the city. And that has implications for public safety, for emergency medical services, and just people living and shopping in their everyday lives. And so I think that that should be included in the mitigations review, is reopening the highway because of the exigencies of this project. I didn't pronounce that right. I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, well, let's have Lisa now.
Let me share my screen. I've got a little bit of a presentation too, and thank you for everybody for attending, and especially thank you to Chief Crispin and Gareth Miller and Josh Andresen. Appreciate you being here. Okay, so can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I think if I put this in presentation mode, I don't see you guys, but let me try this. Okay, all right. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the auxiliary water supply system and why I think it's our best path forward. So a lot of this was covered. I'll try not to repeat myself, but I'm also going to take an opportunity. There were a couple of things I heard that I want to address during the previous presentations. So I'm a District 4 resident. I've lived in the Sunset for 21 years. I've been aware of the AWSS. I actually voted for the bonds, the 3 Easter bonds. And so I'm fully, this is one of an issue I'm really passionate about. So the auxiliary water supply system is separate. It's non-potable emergency firefighting water supply system. It is, again, I think Gareth had some pretty nice images, but I'll have a few of these in my presentation as well. It's separate from our municipal water supply system. It was constructed after the 1906 quake. 80% of the city, the loss of life and property was due to post-earthquake fires. These fires converged into conflagration, and it was so horrifying that the residents of the city and the fire department were very committed to putting in this auxiliary water supply system. So they did it within a 5-year period, 1908 to 1913. It covered only the northeast part of the city because that's where the population was really concentrated at the time. They're really out here in the outer lands. There really were just some roadhouses and things that were, Carville, maybe was in its infancy. So as was mentioned by Gareth and probably with better diagrams, this is a gravity fed system. They actually used the gravity feed to pressurize the system while they were heating the system up with coal. Now, of course, as Gareth mentioned, we don't need to do that. We can use other more modern day methods. But this is really kind of the overall system, and you can see the lines here in black, the 2 saltwater pump stations, number 1 and 2, and then the reservoir tanks and tanks. And this is what was proposed. What I have here. All these images are from the civil grand jury report from 2018. The report actually came out in 2019. So this is really what was recommended was to extend the AWSS, and by doing that, they wanted a pump station at Ocean Beach. We've talked a little bit about there's an existing pump station at Lake Merced, and then an additional pump station at Hunters Point. So this was really, what the extensions and what the civil grand jury reports were recommending. So with the current system, really we've got 2/3 of the city, 9 out of 11 districts have areas that are not protected by the AWSS. So this is, I think, an area that we feel leaves the city pretty vulnerable to post-earthquake fires. This is a breakdown with AWSS, the high-pressure hydrants and miles of main by district. District 4, the numbers are actually wrong. Those are actually on the other side of 19th, so they're technically in District 7. There really are none in District 4 and no miles of main. And then I think, Gareth, you had a nice picture in yours as well. So there's the high pressure hydrants have colored caps. They're fatter. They're more seismically stable. And the color of the top indicates which of the reservoirs or tanks that are feeding them. The skinnier ones are part of the low pressure municipal supply system. And Deborah, I'll make sure you get this presentation. So as we mentioned, 2010, Mayor Newsom transferred the AWSS from the fire department to SFPUC. This was also the year that there were the first of 3 earthquake safety and emergency response bonds. These are voter-approved bond measures. The first was passed in 2010, second in 2014, and in 2020. Out of this bond money, $312 million was ear tagged to expand the AWSS across San Francisco. So, as I mentioned, there were 2 civil grand juries. One was in 2003, one in 2018. Both recommended that the AWSS be expanded. And in the 2019 report, they said, and do it urgently. So I think one of the things that we're concerned about here is that in the 15 years that the PUC has owned the AWSS, they haven't extended a single mile of main, nor a single high pressure hydrant. If you compare that to the time that the fire department owned the system, the fire department between 1913 and the year it was transferred added a total of 757 hydrants, or on average of 117 every 15 years. There were 887 hydrants in place in 1913 and 1,644 as of 2010. So, 757 over 97 years. And just kind of looking at, what's happened in the last 15 years with over $312 million, we haven't added a single hydrant to the system. And I think in the bond language, I think what people were voting for was, I think they felt that they were getting this AWSS system. And I think in kind of looking at the history of what's happened and what some of the proposals have been from the PUC, some of them have quite honestly not given a lot of confidence that the proposals are effective, including a proposal in 2016 to have a flatbeds of miles of large diameter hoses that would be driven into the city by NERT volunteers. And so I think there's been a number of proposals that have gone on in the 15 years that actually don't give that haven't really given the public confidence. I'll speak for myself. It hasn't given me confidence that the proposals generated are solid. So one of the reasons that I'm against the co-benefit, the dual system, is you're limiting your water supply. So you're surrounded by, by using potable water. You asked a question about, somebody had a follow-up question about the sharing of the water. That's actually in State Water Code 73503. And it states under a regional disaster, the water in the city's 3 terminal reservoirs must be shared equitably with the 27 wholesale water customers on the peninsula. So we actually don't have full access to that water. We actually have to share it with the other ratepayers along the peninsula, even in times of emergency. So one of the issues I think is a problem is the limited amount of water because we're relying on a potable water system. Whereas we are surrounded by the biggest body of water on Earth, just to the west of us. So your options to replenish your water or to get it from Hetch Hetchy, and I've got a diagram here. It's 167 miles and it would take about 24 hours. It crosses 3 major fault lines. It actually runs along the San Andreas Fault about 24 or 25 miles. We have no way of knowing whether that actually will be an intact system in order to replenish the water for firefighting. The other option, as you mentioned, Gareth and Josh, was to tap into Lake Merced. That actually will contaminate our potable water supply. And I think what I saw in the project description in the preliminary neg deck report was that it would take estimated several weeks to decontaminate our potable water system. For those of us surviving, you'll have a cholera epidemic in 3 days of biblical proportions. I should probably mention my background is in chemical engineering and biochemistry. So sorry, I'm kind of going to throw some in here. I think so the other part, it's a low pressure system. And I think this is another concern I have in terms of getting the system up to pressure. With the AWSS high pressure hydrants, those are pressurized where that you can hook up directly to those. There's no need for an engine, to pump those. You're directly pressurized. And I think, that was one comment I wanted to make. I'm going to kind of go through my notes here and capture a few other things. We mentioned cisterns. The cisterns would need, my understanding is you'd need two engines. You're going to need one at the cistern and one at the source, unless the fire is next to the cistern. So I think there's 44 trucks that we have in our supply. Is that correct, Chief Crispin? 44?
Yeah.
44 are frontline apparatus. We also have, depending on their maintenance schedule, between 8 and 10 or 15 relief pieces.
Okay, so that would be 26 fires you could fight out of cisterns? Because you need 2, right, per cistern?
Maybe.
So that was one thing. So I think the time, so those are some of the concerns that I have with the system. And then this is kind of about the PL. So there was a couple of other things I'm going to comment on. One was the cost effectiveness. In 2010, the PUC had Metcalf and Eddy, ACOM do they did a assessment. They put together a estimate of what it would take to expand AWSS, and they came up with $600 million in 2010. In 2025 dollars, that's $892 million. And I was thinking, and I was looking into that a little bit further while you were talking. I'm looking back at the meeting minutes of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission Citizens Advisory Committee. These are the meeting minutes from October 21st of 2025. And Josh, I think hopefully you can clarify this for me a little bit, but there's something in the minutes here that says that you responded that the $4 billion was an underestimate at the time and have seen a massive inflation since 2020. So it will be more like 8 to 10 billion these days. And there are a lot of ideas that are not fully developed in that figure. can you clarify if that 8 to 10 billion is just for the current project that was put out for the Sunset in Richmond, or is that in total for the 2/3 of the city that's not yet covered?
That's for the entire city, including areas not covered, as well as upgrades to the existing system. So it was in the 2050 planning study, and it's the idealized complete build out of the system, which is, as you noted, massively expensive, and it was
Complete rip out of which, sorry, complete rip out of which system?
The whole city. So it's the west side is only a portion of those numbers.
So 8 to 10 billion.
To expand the existing AWWS on the east side to build out all portions of the city that don't currently have a system. The west side is a fraction of that cost.
But this quote is about the EFWS system. This is about the potable, the dual system. This isn't about the AWSS system. This is about what the topic is for the dual purpose system is 8 billion.
No, that's not correct. The quote is for both systems. We often call both of these systems EFWS, their emergency fire water system, and it consists of conventional system and the new potable emergency fire water system.
So I guess I'm still maybe I'll give it one more try. So this 8 billion is for you guys to replace the entire system of the city, or because we're talking about extending, what we're worried about is making sure that the coverage around the neighborhoods that are currently unprotected. Do you have a price for that?
No, because it was combined with upgrades to the existing system too. So I don't have a what it would look like for just neighborhoods that are not currently covered.
Okay, and then can we talk about speed of project a little bit? So in the civil grand jury report, they were estimating, and I think this was also true in the Metcalf and Eddy proposal, that 10 years, within 10 years, the AWSS could be expanded at that time at a cost of 600 million. If I look at the 2020 bond, or the 2026 bond language, they're estimating that, and it's contingent upon getting additional bond monies passed, it would be 2040, and that's just for the proposed project that covers the Richmond and Sunset. It does not cover other parts of the city that have that currently don't have AWSS or an alternate system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So
and it's really dependent on how quickly we get the next round of EASR bonds and how much funding is directed towards the system in those EASR bonds, which is also, a policy issue.
Okay, so I guess my as a voter and a taxpayer, I guess my concern is, I guess, let me back up. I'll frame this a little bit differently. In reading through the 2010, 2014, and 2020 bond reports, the decision of how to manage the money and how the projects are move forward is ultimately the decision of the department heads of PUC, DPW, and the fire chief. And from 2010 to 2020, two of those players were Harlan Kelly and Mohammed Nuru, and both have been found, to be guilty of breaking public trust. So the concern I have is there's absolutely no transparency to their meetings or minutes or any public awareness of how those decisions were made. So my concern as a voter and a taxpayer is, how was my money spent? And was it spent in what I felt that I was voting for? And so from my perspective, I'm fully supportive, and I want the fire department and to have everything at their disposal to protect the city of San Francisco. But I'm concerned in the track record that has been in place for the last 15 years. And I'm also concerned that there's not been transparency to the use of the bond money. I'm actually really considering whether this is, maybe a time for an audit prior to this bond measure coming to the ballot. So I think just to kind of I'm happy to take, I'm happy to hear response or challenges or questions. Would love to engage in productive dialogue about this. It's something I think we're all pretty passionate about.
Sure, I'll respond. This is Gareth Miller with the fire department. Um, as I mentioned, I've been with this project for about 2.5 years, and I think tonight we're trying to bring some transparency and some understanding of what the current project is. I clearly don't have all the information for the program for the last 15 years, and that's something that could be unearthed. There are quarterly reports and audits that have taken place of the ESSER funds, and those can be examined. I think what we were asked to come address was the current status of this operation between the PUC and the fire department, and whether the AWSS, or as it's known now, the EFWS, should be transferred back to the PUC. And I just want to say, from the fire department standpoint, we would not endorse that at this point, that we have good cooperation right now, and we feel like we're working towards an appropriate goal at this time. And just to address a couple points that you brought up in your discussion, you mentioned not a single hydrant being added. There have been additional pipelines and hydrants added to the system since the first 2010, 2014 ESSER bonds, basically down in the Mission Bay area. I would certainly love to see more added and have it happen more quickly, but these are big, challenging infrastructure projects. But we're definitely pushing to make things happen as quickly as possible at this point. You also brought up a point about decontamination, and that I think needs to be fleshed out a little further. There's two decontamination issues. One is with the domestic water system in the Sunset and the Richmond, which will likely have multiple breaks because of the connections to people's individual houses. But the intention of this system is that it's isolated from that distribution system. And so if Lake Merced water is introduced, it's only introduced to this sort of backbone transmission system, which should be readily decontaminated in a reasonably short fashion. And then that backbone system would be available for delivering drinking water after it had been decontaminated. The rest of the system may require quite some time for repair and decontamination because there may be widely distributed breaks in the distribution system, if that makes sense.
Lisa, I had mentioned I've only been with PUC for 2 years, so I don't know the darker histories that you describe with those leaders. But I do participate in the quarterly updates, and I do have a list of all the projects that were completed well before my time. And it's an extensive list. And, I came from the private side as a consultant, and I'm very impressed with the work that was completed previously. I'd be happy to talk more about the list that I have or share information, or as Chief Miller said, you can access this in the quarterly reports. And we do have a bond oversight committee that we regularly go to and provide updates and reporting, and happy to share more information if you'd like to go deeper on those topics. I think one of the
That would
issues
be
is
helpful.
that the system is old, right? It was built after 1906, so the first tranche of bond funds were a lot of rehab projects. Pump Station 1 was rehabbed, Pump Station 2 was rehabbed, Ashbury Tank, Jones Tank, and Twin Peak reservoirs. Those all needed to be modernized and seismically upgraded. And we did significant work on these old infrastructure to modify them. We also had a lot of cisterns. Cisterns were just a short-term solution because they're relatively low cost and they help give the fire department another resource. We also installed a lot of pipelines. I wish I had a total number of miles that we installed, but just counting the projects here, I'm counting 9, 10 different pipeline projects. Oh wait, some of those are pump station, but at least half a dozen pipeline projects. So there has been good progress, and really this team has gained a lot of momentum since I've come on board. My position, I think, was part of that gearing up to build the west side. And we have a large team of consultant support. We have geotech expert, pipeline experts, automation experts, traffic, construction managers, public outreach. And we've done a ton of work, and we're really geared up to make progress. And one thing I'll say is that regardless if you use saltwater or freshwater, we need these pipelines in the ground. From our perspective, the sooner we get the pipelines in the ground, the better chance we have of protecting people and providing water supply. And so that's been our mission, and we get a lot of pressure from the supervisors to get it done faster. And we are always pushing our team and exploring solutions to accelerate our schedule. So that's kind of what we've been up to since I've been here, and we've gained a lot of momentum, and we're really making great progress. And I think, from my perspective, I would just like to see more EASR bond money so we can, now that we've got this team and we've got the wheels spinning and the momentum going, we just want to get pipe in the ground. And as soon as we get pipe in the ground, we have gravity flow. And we're looking at the pump stations that we can get even more money to get higher pressure. That's even greater benefit. But we don't need that for great fire protection. That's just additional bonuses on top of the pipe in the ground. So that's kind of how I see things, which I know is counter to your perspective, but that's what I see, and I'm very passion driven to get this done.
I'd love if we could talk and you could share some of that additional information with me. That would be great.
Be happy to. And I will say, if we go through an extended appeal process and redebating, I mean, to pivot to get saltwater, the permitting and everything, I mean, we won't be doing anything for a decade. At the same time, if we build these pipelines, there's nothing to say that a future generation couldn't come along and advocate for a policy change to change these pipes to saltwater, to build the saltwater pump station. I think that would be a very challenging initiative. But once the pipelines are there, we could connect saltwater pump stations in the future. So I don't know that this policy difference in opinion of policy, I don't know that it should really stop us from building pipelines.
Presentation, and thank you for responding, Josh, as well. I had a couple questions. One is, it was unclear from looking at your documents included what the targeted capacity that you've designed for is in terms of population growth, because included in your CEQA documents was a water needs forecast for additional capacity, and there was sort of different scenarios, but there was it wasn't clear which one this system is set up to provide as far as growth capacity. And that was an issue in the appeal that a point of our appeal, because there is only one growth related general plan CEQA review that's been completed, and that was 2022. And that was for 36,000 housing units, as I understand. And so that review is not sufficient for the family rezoning plan, which creates potential capacity for 800,000 new units in the city, which would be a tripling of the city's population. And so that is the subject of a lawsuit. So that there's just hasn't been a CEQA review for any growth beyond like 36,000 units, as I understand it. So if to the extent that this water system with like water lines that are going to be upsized from the, I think, what is 16-inch, correct me if I'm wrong, diameter lines to up to 48-inch lines, that this is for more water for a growing population. And I think it'd be really helpful to know what that population is that you design to serve with this new system. And if it's beyond that 36,000 growth that the city has already had through a CEQA review, if it's more than that, then that this creates under the CEQA checklist unplanned growth potential. And so you would need to independently do, to move this forward, growth, CEQA review of that growth that the planning department didn't do for this rezoning. So I think that's one thing. And the other is, how far along are your design documents at this point? You say you're almost done. The cost estimate that was included in the CEQA documents it wasn't dated, but it was a 35% design for contracts A and B. So where is the design stand currently?
Miller, do you want to start or do you want me to go?
I can start with the response to that. The design is based on information from the San Francisco Planning Department. And there's a limitation to we can talk about the merits of the project. It's my understanding that because the CEQA appeal has been filed and there's a process for that to be heard and understood, that I'm not allowed to address any of the CEQA components of the appeal in this setting, if that makes sense. It needs to follow the official process and take place in the appropriate circumstances. So I think I can clearly tell you that the system is designed based on information provided by the planning department. And I think that's as much as I can say about the design of the system and anything having to do with the CEQA appeal beyond the merits of the system. Happy to talk about the merits of the system, the design, how it meets the operational needs of the fire department. But any of the environmental components have to go through the normal process. And if I misunderstood that, Josh, correct me, but that's my understanding of the CEQA appeal process.
That's correct.
Well,
and there will be sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I think just to ask the question succinctly is how much of this potable water expansion, what is that population that it could serve? Just per your design.
It can serve the planned growth. And yeah, there'll be a formal response to comment on that like Chief Miller said, we're not supposed to elaborate on the CEQA component. So,
okay. Where's your design as it currently stands? How far is it?
So contract A, that first contract from Lake Merced up to that Merced Manor area is at 95% design. And then contract B down slope, and we're currently planning down 37th Avenue, is at 35% design, or we're in progress on 35% design.
Has your cost estimate changed from the 178 million or 73 million at 35% design?
I think it went up a little bit. I don't have the number off the top of my head for contract A and B. Contract A is around 80 million.
And I appreciate all the questions and interests. I do want to say we're getting pretty far afield from, should the fire department turn the AWSS over to the SFPUC? And so, if we could kind of drive back to that central focus on the topic and maybe start rounding things up. We're past my bedtime.
Brief question, but it might be too long for this if we're in limited time. I don't know who to address it to, whether it's Lisa or Gareth or Josh or someone else. I'm wondering, right now, this is under an appeal of the EIR, the PM. There's an appeal of the PMDND. What's the process between now and the final determination that this EFWS will be given final approval and it can go forward? After this appeals process, depending on the outcome, let's say for the sake of argument that the appeal is denied. Let me just do a hypothetical. The appeal is denied. What are the next steps in the process until this whole issue is resolved and it's a go or no go?
So, and yeah, I think it'd be more appropriate for a different forum, probably with the PUC folks who were doing part of the
Go to
CEQA
Glenn's
appeal.
question, if you can. Yeah, Glenn?
Yes,
Final-
thank you. Has the fire department suggested any additional infrastructure for firefighting with the mayor's family planning plan? And has the mayor asked for any additional fire infrastructure with his intent on developing the west side?
So no, those conversations have not happened between the mayor and our team.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of our panelists. This has been really interesting and informative.